I mean, there's hundreds of episodes on my YouTube channel, but it's a new time. It's a new era, period, reality in the world that we're living in. So we're gonna just start fresh with kind of like a daily hang. Um, this chat, we're usually talking about martial arts or fighting or training or learning or growing in some way, trying to improve ourselves through studying, you know, human movement and how we think and what we do. That's a lot of what we talk about. But also, we're not fixed things. You, me, none of us. We can talk about totally different things a week from now and be like, remember back then when we used to talk, like, we're ever changing. The world is changing. We're in an environment right now completely different than it was 15 days ago. Completely different. And I was recording this earlier. If it has changed in a way that's really challenging right now, I'm sorry, and I hope it gets better. But please understand the world will change again and again and again. Every aspect of it, you will change. Um, the environment will change. Viruses and safety and governments and structures, all these things are always changing. So we feel uncertain a lot of the times because we're like, hey, wait, there's uncertainty everywhere. If you understand that there's always uncertainty everywhere, it makes you feel a little more chill about it. It's like, oh, this is a normal state. Not knowing what tomorrow will hold is a normal state because you never do know what tomorrow will hold. You just sort of feel like it because for a lot of us, our world's a little more structured. We have a job and we have a home and we have partners. And here we got a comment: the single constant in the universe is change. Yeah, and even that might change, right? What if that changes? There is Everything is ever changing, and that's okay because that's normal. That's how we live. Um, like I said, something big like this, some call it Mr. Taleb or Professor, I think. Uh, there's a book called Black Swan. That's a brilliant book. You started working out regularly because you gave me the idea. Oh man, I'm so glad to hear that. A Black Swan event is an event that seems to completely shift the paradigm of everything you live in. So, for example, a global pandemic, suddenly we're like, hey, wait a second. I would get up in the morning and I would train martial arts, and then I'd put on my work clothes and I would walk to work, and then I would do this thing, and then I would come home. Wait, all that has changed. That feels seismic, but it isn't as much as you think because, like I said, everything is always changing. You're just not noticing it as much. You're not noticing it as much. And the good of that is you're already used to it, whether you realize it or not. The down of it is that this, and again, also good, this will change too. You know, 3 weeks from now, if we look back at this, we'll be like, oh, yeah, 3 weeks ago, that's when we were all in our homes and we were all worried and the news was on and it said it was going up, but now it's going away. We're all perhaps, could be something different, but perhaps it's that. And we're all very happy and proud as a collection of humans that we all made this shift, stayed inside in such a way that we took care of each other, stopped something spreading that can hurt our parents and those among us who are sick or weak or have breathing issues. We did that, right? So things are going to always change. That's okay. This podcast, is this a podcast? Monday to Friday, I'm going to do this for about 20 minutes. We're going to put it in podcast form as well on all podcast platforms. I'm not going to, it's not done, but I have a very good friend who works in a business, cannabis business in Canada. And I think, I was going to show you the thing, but maybe I'll wait. But I got him here. And I believe we're exploring the idea of doing a partnership or a sponsorship where we can do this 20 minutes a day on every platform. So we should be able to do that. I think that's realistic. Again, when I say 5 days a week, the world will change. So 6 weeks from now, I could be traveling everywhere again. That will make it more challenging or more difficult. That's okay. And your path changes as you go, you know? But you control the things about the path you can control. I said this on Periscope earlier, linked to my Twitter, at Robin Black MMA on Twitter. The structure right now is something you can control. By no means do you have to have structure. You don't have to give yourself a schedule by the hour. You don't have to do that at all. But you will want to your health, your physical and mental health will thank you if you more or less sleep at the same times. We've become very accustomed to that. And that seems to be good for our bodies. So you want to probably be sleeping at a pretty similar time. That is a part of a structure. From there, you're like, well, I'm going to probably eat at fairly similar times, unless you're fasting. But even that is a similar cycle. So you're going to eat at very fairly similar times. Once you put those structures in, and you say to yourself, I got to exercise. My wife and I just seem to naturally in the morning exercise right now. I don't think we've ever. I mean, that's not true. I was going to say I don't think we've ever done that, but we have. That has been structure. You get some exercise. All of a sudden, you got some exercise. You're doing some chunk of the day where you're learning. In my case, I might study martial arts. How many hours of sleep? CJ asked. Right now, the more the better, right? To a degree. If you can sleep 8 hours, if you can sleep 8 hours right now, love from Bahrain. Hope to see you back here again soon. Thanks, Amit. It was a beautiful country. I was only there for like 19 hours. I was landed, was at an event, Brave CF, and then I was off to London. But I hope to spend some time in the Middle East again soon. Fascinating parts of the world everywhere. We're learning everywhere. But yeah, if you can sleep 8 hours right now, you will not, there will be long chunks of life where you will not get 8 hours of sleep. So enjoy it. For some people, a little nap in the day. We haven't been doing that at all, and we're feeling very healthy and pretty mentally together, at least in good spirits, right? That's where you should at least be. Uh, Plobes Little City says, "I love your 1 minute breakdowns. Thank you very much. I love making them. More coming next week, a lot more." Um, but so all of a sudden now you've got a bit of structure. Now, if this is a martial arts podcast at its root, although I think we're going to, I just had a conversation again with my friend who is, I believe, probably West Coast Dave is my buddy's name. I believe we're going to partner with this company to do this. Um, we, uh, we're going to chat with some musicians too, and some other types of artists as part of this podcast. So once we get set up, now we can phone someone in, and it won't just be 20 minutes of me sitting here, pontificating about life, but we'll have somebody in to chat with for 20 to 30 minutes. We do that every day, man. We're going to learn a lot of shit because you bring in smart and interesting and creative people. Everybody has similarities in how they live their life, but also a lot of differences, and you learn different things from different people. Right now, if you can get 8 hours of sleep, back to that question, man, take it, because there'll be periods in your life where you might not. So that structure, I think, is going to help a lot of people. But this, for myself, 2 weeks in, we're feeling good. My wife looks and feels great. Exercise, good sleep at a similar time, and trying to eat healthy, and trying to be creative, and trying to learn stuff. You like martial arts like I do? You can go online and you can learn jujitsu from Matt Serra. Bibiano Fernandez just sent me an invitation about some a jujitsu class tonight in Montreal that he's going to virtually be a part of. All this, it's all there. It's all there right now. And then this might be a good time to learn to do some learning, do a little reading. I'm going to try to add 40 minutes of reading a day. That's something I wanted to do. We're 2 weeks in, haven't done it yet, right? So we're not all going to nail this. We're not going to nail it. I ask sometimes right before we do this daily podcast, I go in and ask for a few questions over on Periscope. Periscope's an interesting platform. You get people who follow you every day there instead of people sometimes who are popping in and out. So, but while we're at it, we got a question here. I know you think about MMA as a form of artistry, but can you connect a destructive side of it to the philosophy? Interesting question. So when I'm looking at martial arts, I'm looking at a fight, I will often go the other direction, go from the fight and look at it at the fight moments as a metaphor for life, right? And it wasn't quite working. That metaphor wasn't quite connecting for quite a long time because I would look at it and say, what if you're in a dispute with your beloved, right? Your wife or your husband, or you're in a dispute with your business partner or your best friend? The studying of the fight moment as a win or a lose scenario is an incorrect metaphor because you're not supposed to win or lose a conflict with your wife or your husband or your best friend or your business partner. You're not supposed to be victorious. But that's when I understood it. What is victory in a conflict like that? Victory is serenity. right? You're not supposed to, there, I proved it to my best friend that I'm smarter than him, or I told off. And we learn this when we watch television all the time. We watch football or we watch politics or news on TV, and it's two heads arguing and then changing the truth and then changing their position and altering the debate until they win. And I was like, that's flawed, because winning isn't defeating the other person. The victory is serenity. The victory is we're all happy now and we're better for this. If that's actually your fucking goal, and it's not easy, and we're not fucking saints, but once you shift that, what will be a victory in this debate with my best friend or my wife or my business partner would be we both are happy. Now the metaphor works. Now the metaphor works. So when you are trapped against the cage and you have an underhook and you want to win the position, once you make the metaphor that victory is everybody's happy and this is serene, we go back to comfort. When we go back to sort of everything kind of connecting and working, all of a sudden that metaphor works, right? So it's a strange connection, because in the fight, I am fighting that guy, also fighting myself, and also fighting anxiety and fear and emotion and all those things. But victory over him, victory over your opponent, I think works better as a metaphor as victory over yourself in most things. So again, let's use fighting with your business partner as an example. You're fighting, or your best friend, you're fighting. Once you realize you're not trying to defeat him, because you learn that on television, that we're supposed to win every argument, we're supposed to win every debate. I'm blue and he's red, or vice versa, and we yell at each other, we shift our arguments, and we lie and we manipulate it until we win. There's nothing. Nobody's happy. You don't feel good. Like some people walk away going, I fucking told him, but you're not happy, right? Once you shift that type of victory to victory being, we go back to the world being comfortable. We go back to everything fitting and everything connecting and happiness. If happiness is the victory, now it's not about defeating the other person. So these metaphors have to shift over time to really work. And honestly, like, for my day-to-day purpose, I will use a metaphor to describe a 1-minute breakdown. And I'll be like, well, this is kind of like stew. And if you add these flavors, then this thing all kind of blends in and you end up with this thing, right? But quite honestly, and it's not all the time, it's 10 minutes here and on a walk there. And, while watching a TV show here, I'm constantly really looking at philosophically at what these metaphors kind of mean. That's a real thing. And it's incredibly, like, it's mentally pleasing for me. Sometimes it's hard, sometimes it's emotional labor, sometimes it's hard work, but it's incredibly rewarding to look at a painting, the same painting, for a long, long, long time. People who love art do this. People who love music do this. People who love dance do this. People who love fucking architecture do this. You look at that thing for a long time and then slowly start to think about it. Sometimes purposefully. How is that? Why does it stand? What's the angle of the architecture? Why did they put a steeple on it? Whatever, right? And other times it's gently, like you don't even try. You just gently blur your vision and allow the thing to take shape. And then it starts to look like another thing. And then that architecture looks like something in nature. Then you think about how nature ended up like that. And then, and it just layers. That's what it is to truly be passionate. People often say, oh man, I'm passionate about something. That's cool. They're not full of shit. They are absolutely passionate. But we rarely take the time to say, what does that look like? What is that actually? You know? And what it is constantly looking at something in different ways, and then purposefully, like if you say, this is a very imperfect metaphor, but you're trying to train, you're training with somebody else. I had a friend, Jesse Bongfeld. Jesse Bongfeld fought in the UFC. He's a very great fighter. He trained and I said had a friend. He is my friend. We just don't speak a lot over the last couple of years, but when I ran into him, it was wonderful to see him. And when you have many, many people that you learn from and share ideas with, that's the kind of friends that sometimes you are. And then you'll just connect. Somebody will say, hey, Robin was talking about you and his thing, and then we'll fucking be on Facebook tonight. That's the beauty of these kinds of relationships. But Jesse lived in a place called Kenora, Ontario. I don't know if he still does, but he might. I believe it's Kenora. Yes. And so that's a small town of like 15 or 20,000, maybe double in the summer because it's a tourist town. And he would train in a martial arts studio with like 8 people, none of whom were professional fighters. So when he would train, while everybody else was having to train with a pro fighter, he would literally like take away a tool and have to explore around it, or work against two of them, or exhaust himself, or be half blindfolded. Like he would literally have to modify how he did it so that he could see it in different ways, or only fight on one foot, or only use one tool, or keep your head in a position. All of that purposeful recontextualizing of the thing makes you see things differently, right? It makes you see things differently. And somebody said, life without weed sucks big time. Sorry, man. I'm sorry to hear that. But it shouldn't. Take a bit of time and allow the clean mind to do its own thing. Your brain does wild shit if you let it. Of course, it's fun to get fucked up sometimes, but if you leave your brain to kind of explore different things, read different things, and look at stuff differently, and take long walks, and don't follow the rhythm of your footsteps and let your mind wander. This is just a practice. To practice like yoga or meditation or practice jujitsu. It's just a practice of thinking, and you expand it. And so that's what it is to really be passionate about something, is you constantly look at it in different ways forever. And this is rewarding. You learn things about life. You see things differently. Eventually, you spot your own flaws. Where am I weak? Where am I thinking wrong? Why am I such a dick in that way? Why did I react this way? And you start to examine your own self. How you react that way. This is thinking, right? People always ask me about process and sort of wisdom and how you explore these things. And of course, we're all on that path trying to find it. Did he get some better skills from doing it purposefully handicapped? So that was a follow-up question. Purposefully handicapping himself because he didn't have the high-level people, so he handicapped himself. And of course, you're going to gain knowledge from that. At the very least, if it doesn't make you better, it's going to make you think differently. It's going to make your brain create neural pathways in different ways to react differently. Paulie Malignaggi, Robin Black, Mr. DAZN in the building. Hi, money, Mr. DAZN. What up? Are you Mr. DAZN? I do some work for DAZN. I haven't for a little bit, but I love working for them. Cool, kind of a fascinating company. We'll talk more about them on another day. But Paulie Malignaggi, not everybody loves Paulie, which I think they misunderstand him. And if you're a fight people, and you're MMA people, him and Conor McGregor had a conflict, and now you think you hate Paulie. But Paulie's a brilliant guy, and Paulie became incredible. And I sat down with Paulie in Chicago. It's on this YouTube channel. You just go back and you could just put it in the search engine, Robin Black, Paulie Malignaggi brunch, and you'll find it. But Paulie became incredibly good with his front hand, you know? And I asked him why, and he said he fucking broke his right hand all the time, right? Paulie is a I'm really enjoying this conversation, so I hope we didn't lose it. There was a little cut there, I'm sure, but that's okay. There was a question down here. Oh yeah, Paulie's a good analyst from Mr. Fungal. Paulie's a great analyst, and I try not to judge the work of others, and I try to learn from it, good and bad and different, whatever. But I don't always jive with how people do a similar job to me. Sometimes I do. I really love Dan Hardy's work, for example, and there's plenty, but then not always, because sometimes it's super formulaic and it's done a particular way. It has to be. And it's not about formulas. But Paulie, I really like. Paulie, I think, is very, very he's an abstract thinker at times as well as a concrete thinker. So it's really, really good. But yeah, imagine, your hand is always broken, but you're really driven. What's going to happen? This hand's going to get better. Not only that, you're going to have to move in different ways because you can't catch. You're going to distribute your weight in you, restructure how you move and how you think. And you can do this with everything. You can do this with everything. You can change. I'm going to wrap this up soon because we seem to be clicking in and out. Really enjoyed this. At least 20 minutes a day. We're getting including the little cuts. I hope that's okay. Alex Pereira, glory middleweight champion, knocked out Israel Adesanya. Yes, he did. But that's a long time ago. Here, maybe I'll leave you with this. If we cut out again, please accept my thanks for joining me. But you need to look at these. You don't need to do anything. could consider looking at things this way, which is we are in constant states of improvement. Sometimes sometimes we're getting slower or weaker or dumber, if we're not eating well and training well and thinking well or making errors, or we get ill, we can go the other direction, right? But we are in constant state of change. So how somebody lost in kickboxing 7 years ago has almost no relationship whatsoever to how they will perform in the future. It just doesn't. And the reason that's valuable to look at is because then you don't judge yourself. It's like, oh, I could never do that. Well, if you couldn't do something before, all you have to do is upgrade your skills and your thinking and yourself, and then you can do that, right? So by recognizing this in these athletes, you can then recognize it in yourself. Just because you couldn't stretch that way in yoga class a couple of years ago doesn't mean you couldn't a couple of years from now. Of course it does. All you have to do is put the effort in, and you'll change. So clearly, Izzy changed. Lost in a kickboxing match 6 years ago. Irrelevant. In fact, what it could do is make you way better. Losing is an important part of growth. Losing is a very important part of growth. It makes you go back and study your process. Oh, what was I doing? Why? Oh, wow, I wasn't focused. I wasn't training properly. I was overconfident or underconfident. All the self-assessment comes from loss. So losing is very important. I'm going to wrap this up. Going to Toronto. If you're watching this live, thank you. Question: how do you analyze fights so well? It's so good. Well, man, thank you. That's very kind. But it connects right back to what we're talking about. And this is a quote: I had to fail and fail again to succeed. Michael Jordan. Awesome. It goes back to what we're talking about. You do a lot. You do something a lot. You over and over, and you try to get better at it, and you assess how you're doing, and you make improvements, and then sometimes you move backwards and sometimes you move forward. I had to move backwards a lot about 3 years ago to really get to the point where I'm analyzing now, and that was I had to break the structure of how we feel compelled to look at things. Everybody, how's the striking? How's his wrestling? Who's the better grappler? What if it? That's all old thinking. That's barely relevant. We just do it because that's what we've always done. I had to shatter that to be able to go through and look at it from a different way and examine this from a different way. I had to throw sports away and embrace art. And if you go too far that way, eventually you'll have to pull a bit of sport back in there, or some parts of it. But then if it goes too far, well, people don't understand what's happening with the physical. It's your job to show them. If you explore the emotional reaction of two people in combat, and that goes too far, too deep, you might have to go back to the technical. But all of these things are important, right? All of these things are important, and they push and they pull, and that's how you learn things. And you just do it a lot. And there'll be times where you'll get a lot of resistance because to do anything well, you probably do it different. And when you do something different, people don't want different necessarily. So you'll get a lot of pushback. You have to push through that. And a lot of this stuff will take a long time. So the only way you'll do it is if it's something you're deeply in love with and something you're compelled to do. Because as soon as people start making fun of your hair and your eyebrows and the way you talk and the way you do shit, because that's inevitable, they will do that. You might be like, oh, fuck, I don't have time for this. Or you'll find resistance as it gets harder, even your own. You're like, fuck, I don't know where I'm going. You'll quit unless you love it, right? That's why you should do things you love. It's easier said than done, but right now it's a bit of a reset. It's a good time to explore some things that you love. Figure out the technologies and the options of how to do it. Might not get paid, might not turn into like $1 million business, but it might be incredibly rewarding in other ways. Hell, I've got friends and people close to me that make real good money running, a website or an Etsy store or like an Instagram account. These things are all these YouTube channel. These things all exist. We can do them. Why am I sitting here talking to you every day? Because this is what I should be doing. It's what I do. It's what I do. And I'm fucking thankful that you guys hang here with me. I really am. If you're watching this live tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 4 p.m. on the West Coast, I'm going to talk to Beck Rollins on the Bellator Instagram Live. Bellator Instagram Live, 7 p.m. Friday night, tonight. And I might even pop up on the weekend. I said I was doing this Monday to Friday, but we're having a good time. Shout out Northern Soul Cannabis. This is my buddy, and he and I are working on maybe doing a bit of a partnership together, make this a daily thing and hit it up on every podcast thing as well. Just like that, 25 minutes. Really enjoyed it today. Really, really did. Thank you guys for giving me your time and your attention and your feedback. And it means a lot to me. I'll see you Monday. Hell, I might see you tomorrow. I don't know.